Hello friends, my name is Saket Bansal and I am an Agile coach. Today we are talking about Agile Framework. In today's session, we will cover the history of Agile. We will also discuss the Agile values and principles, and we will get into the details of what makes Agile different from traditional development methodology. And at the end, we will look at Agile Project Management Framework. A very famous quote from Charles Darwin, and which is very relevant for Agile. In the struggle for survival, the fittest win out at the expense of their rival because they succeed in adapting themselves best to their environment. So adapting themselves best to their environment seems to be a key for survival, and that is where Agile comes into the picture. In Agile, we focus on creating products which are adaptable for the future need. We do not target to create something which can forecast the future need and build it today. We target to create something which can be adapted as and when the new need get discovered by the market, by the society. Sometimes we get a feeling that Agile is something which has just come recently. Yes, Agile Manifesto came in 2001, but even before that, people were trying to build something which can give them fast delivery value. United States Department of Defense and NASA were using iterative and incremental development since 1950. And in 1960, there was a concept called evolutionary project management, which was recommending 1 to 2 weeks iteration cycles and delivering product at each iteration. In 1986, there was a paper, New Product Development Game, which was published in Harvard Business Review, and this particular paper recommended a rugby approach of dedicated self-organizing team for new product development. As extract from this particular paper, the relay race approach to produce development may conflict with the goal of maximizing speed and flexibility. Instead of a holistic or a rugby approach where a team tries to go the distance as a unit, passing the ball back and forth may better serve today's competitive requirement. The relay race approach signifies that we have specialized group who runs at a distance and then they passes the baton to the next particular group, and this is how we manage our development cycle. It has been observed for the problems which are new, which are uncertain, this kind of approach results in big rework and less adaptable product, because things are not flexible. Whenever we discover new change, we cannot bring that change into the system because of the sequence of the activities. Instead of that, if we follow a rugby approach where the complete team works as a one unit and target to finish the product development, and while working with each other, they don't work in a boundaries. Stop running the relay race and take up rugby. The Scrum and rugby is kind of are the words which are frequently used in Agile literature. Let's have a look at Scrum. Now we have various Agile approaches. There is Scrum, there is extreme programming, there is clear crystal, and many type of methodologies which are sometimes built by the organization or by some particular units. Like Microsoft has their own Agile approach, IBM has Agile Unified Processes. So we have a good amount of Agile approaches in the industry, which makes us sometimes wonder, so what is Agile? If there is Scrum, there is XP, there is DSTM, then what does the Agile means? Wikipedia says Agile is a software development method based on iterative and incremental development, where requirements and solutions evolve through collaboration between self-organizing cross-functional team. So if we look at this particular section of the definition, it emphasizes that iterative and incremental development and having a self-organizing and cross-functional teams. The Agile promotes adaptive planning and evolutionary development. It promotes a time-boxed iterative cycles where in that particular time box duration, we can do all the things together and generate a working software. So this is something which is called agile. These are like characteristics of the agile. Highsmith talks about agile is the ability to both create and respond to the change in order to profit in a turbulent business environment. Agility is an ability to balance flexibility and stability. So we saw that there are various agile methodologies, and there are different methodologies and all are agile. So what makes them agile? The methodologies are a collection of practices. These all practices are adhering to agile values and principles. If there is a methodology which is giving us a practice to implement the agile values and principle, the methodology is an agile methodology. So let us look at agile values and principles. In 2001, 17 lightweight methodologists met and agreed on Agile Manifesto. And this manifesto has simple 4 statements. It talks about individual and interaction over process and tools, working software over comprehensive documentation, customer collaboration over contract negotiation, responding to change over following a plan. These are the 4 statements, but we should not overlook the 5th statement, which is written on the same manifesto. It says, while there is a value in the item on the right, but we values item on the left more. Especially if you are dealing with PMI-ACP exam, you may get various options who tries to give an impression that the right side, the items on the rights are useless. For example, you may have an option which talks about that documentation is just a useless activity. You should be aware of that Agile Manifesto does not say that item on the right are useless. It emphasizes item on the left more. It does not say that comprehensive documentation is useless, but it says that we should always prefer working software over documentation. Let us get deep into all these 4 statements. Individual and interaction over process and tools. Agile focuses on individuals. Agile believes that in the knowledge industry, people wants to work. They are motivated. They will work if they have been given a goal. They have been given a direction, but they don't like to be micromanaged. Agile emphasizes that we should have processes which facilitates individual and interaction. We should not have a processes, we should not have a tools which expects that everything is done by the process itself. We cannot replace individuals just by by putting more checklists. The processes and tools are important, but individuals and the interaction in these among those individuals is something which creates a productive environment which delivers the software faster. The second manifesto statement talks about working software over comprehensive documentation. This statement emphasizes that we should focus on creating working software fast and sooner in the delivery life cycle. We should not be spending too much time in creating a good detailed documentation. Rather than spending that time in creating documentation, we should put that effort in creating a working software. This particular agile value also emphasizes that we should measure performance of our software development by measuring the completed functionality. We should focus on what is working rather than how many documents has been written. Traditionally, we have been measuring progress on the basis of milestones. For example, that system specification requirement document has been signed off, design document has been created, so let us give a credit to 20 or 30% to the project. Agile says no to it. It says that the progress of the project should only be measured by using a working software. Whenever you have a discussion with the client, whenever you want to demonstrate product, always demonstrate the working software. Give a preference to a working software rather than giving a good prototype demo. Customer collaboration over contract negotiation. In Agile, we need to create an environment where customer becomes part of the team. We should not have an environment where role and responsibilities are so stringently defined and people want to limit themselves in their own role. There should not be a vendor-customer fencing where the vendor and customers are just driven by the contract terms. Contracts are important, but contracts should be designed in a way which facilitates interaction between the customer and the development team. In the absence of those kind of contracts, in absence of those kind of environment, what can happen is that vendor may work just on the given scope which was initially visualized by the customer. Even if the vendor does the 100% scope, customer may not get the desired value, because in software we have a very uncertain environment and things cannot be visualized upfront. So in order to get maximum out of any software development project, we should have customer and vendor collaboration rather than the complete development project is driven by contract. If we are talking about supply of some hardware material or setting up a data center, contract may just become the driving factor of managing all the work. But in software development, contract should be written in a way which promotes the collaboration and customer becomes a part of development team. The fourth value, respond to change over following a plan. This value talks about that we should work in a progressive elaboration in a rolling wave planning approach. We should not plan the complete detailed activities upfront. We should start with a top level planning and we should elaborate that planning as we move deeper into the project. It is not a good idea to plan activities is for an individual which is going to be done after 6 months. So Agile says that you should have a plan, but those plans should be flexible and adaptable enough. The planning approach the Agile team takes are adaptive in nature. They start with a top level planning and the plan get revised as they learn new things while doing development. So rather than we just follow the plan which was made during the initial phase of the project, we should have planning which is part of our complete project life cycle. We keep planning, we keep adapting, and then we keep moving forward. So this makes us very responsive towards the changes. Rather than we take change as an exception, we should build our planning process in a way that we welcome change. Now these 4 value statements are further substantiated by 12 Agile principles. These 12 Agile principles talks about the same concept but in more elaborative and detailed term. And the values and principle are the part of Agile Manifesto, and if your methodology is supporting these values and principle, that methodology is an Agile methodology. Let's look at the principles. These are 12 principles which will reiterate whatever we have seen in 4 values. Our highest priority is to satisfy the customer through early and continuous delivery of valuable software, and that is why most of the all the Agile methodology talks about incremental deliveries. Welcoming changing requirement even late in the development process. Agile process harness change for the customer competitive advantage. Now it does not mean that you keep changing the color of your page every day, but it does mean that you need to be responsive to the business need. And many times you find the changes in your projects are coming primarily because of error and omissions. The incremental delivery cycle of the Agile reduces the risk of error and omission. You get upfront feedback. The customer get to know about the system very well in advance. Now we expect once we omit the change request which might get generated because of error and omission, the remaining change request would be of nature which gives value to the business. So we should welcome those kind of changes, and our product on our process should be adaptable enough which can take care of these business critical change requests. Delivering working software frequently from a couple of weeks to a couple of months with a preference to the shorter cycle. Same like same like first principle. We want to satisfy the customer frequently. Business people and developer must work together daily throughout the project. Customer collaboration over contract negotiation. Reiterating the same value. Build project around motivated individuals. Give them environment and support they need. They trust them to get the job done. Motivated individuals are crucial part of agile teams. We cannot implement agile processes where the team consists of production workers. We need a motivated individuals to implement the agile processes. For production workers, maybe the scientific management is the right thing, where they have been given the detailed task instructions. But for knowledge worker, we need an approach which gives them a freedom, which gives them freedom in selecting the way they want to follow for achieving the goal. They just need to be told what needs to be get done. Agile talks about the most effective and efficient method of conveying information is face-to-face conversation. Nothing new in it. We know from centuries that face-to-face communication is the best media of communicating, and Agile re-emphasizes the same principle. Working software is the primary measure of progress. We should not be giving credit for the documentation, because in traditional projects we have seen that project never get delayed till the time it is 90% complete, because till that particular time nobody sees the output. Everybody focuses on milestones, which are like signing of SRS document, acceptance of design, etc., development. And once the system goes into testing, then only we come to know that how much it is complete. Agile process promotes sustainable development. It talks about that you should not have overtime or a stressed environment in a team, because the framework gives a continuous work. It expects that team should be delivering iteration on iterations indefinitely. So that the development should be sustainable, where sponsor, developer and users can work at a constant pace indefinitely. Because in absence of that, you may have a high velocity sometime, you may have a low velocity sometime, and it makes the project unpredictable. Continuous attention to technical excellence and good design enhance agility. Now, if we want to give an incremental and iterative development deliveries, we do expect many changes coming in from the customer side in the initial phase of the development. And until unless we have a good technical excellence practice implemented in our software process, we cannot maintain our agility for long. We should have clean code. The software should be refactored continuously as it gets built. And continuous attention to technical excellence is something that only can guarantee the future enhancement, future agility. This is a simplicity. This is a very interesting agile principle and very important from exam point of view. The art of maximizing the amount of work not done is essential. In agile, we emphasize that identify the work which you can avoid doing, which you cannot remove doing, because we know that only 40% or even less than 40% of the features get used by the end user. So let us identify only the features which adds maximum value and keep our life simple by maximizing the amount of work which is not required to be done. The best architecture requirement in design emerges from self-organizing team. Again, emphasizing on people, self-organizing team. At regular interval, the team should reflect on how to become more efficient, then tune and adjust its behavior accordingly. Agile talks about that we should be doing retrospective frequently, and retrospectives should be conducted in a way that they gives an opportunity to analyze the processes, the development processes, the working processes, and identify how efficient we can become further. What all changes we need to do so we become more and more efficient for the future project duration. So let us recapitalize whatever we have discussed till now in a few quick Q&A types slides. So let us start with Agile Manifesto. So individual and interaction over process and tools. Working software over comprehensive documentation. Customer collaboration over contract negotiation. Responding to change over following a plan. Let's move further. So these are the few activities I have written, and we need to identify which all activities are recommended in Agile and which all are not recommended in Agile. Incremental and iterative delivery. Is it recommended? Yes. Upfront requirement analysis. Upfront requirement analysis during the project life cycle. It is not recommended because we want to work in a incremental and iterative cycles where we analyze the requirement which is sufficient to give us incremental and iterative delivery. We should not be spending too much time in doing upfront requirement analysis because things will change with time. Measuring progress by working software? Yes. Working softwares are the only measurement of progress, not the functional milestones. Managing and directing team. Should we create detailed task list? Should as a project manager I give task list to each of my team member? No. Agile recommends we should create self-organizing and motivated team rather than a team which just takes command from you. Does Agile recommend cross-functional team? Yes. We should have cross-functional team which work as a one unit, rugby team. Does Agile recommend face-to-face interactions? Yes. Do we have a stringent change management process in Agile, which is something called change control board? No. Because our planning itself takes care of changes. We have adaptive planning. So we don't plan upfront, so we don't need change management process or a stringent change management process. It is taken care organically. Do we follow rolling wave planning where we just plan at a top level and then we elaborate the plan as we move forward? Yes, in Agile we do follow rolling wave planning. We are done with 2 of our agenda items, and now we are moving towards Agile and traditional development methodology comparison. This is kind of a fun section where we just compare how Agile is different from traditional development methodology which we have been following for a while. Whatever methodology we follow, at the end business needs value, they needs profit. So irrespective of the methodology, vision for the project remains the same. Projects still have some life cycle. It moves from inception till production. It still has a requirement to cater to, and it does has schedule. We do need to know when the project is getting delivered. It will still have team. whatever methodology we will follow, there will be people who would be working on it, and they would be communicating with each other. So these ingredients of project remains the same irrespective of methodology we follow. Now if you follow a traditional methodology, which is like a waterfall methodology where we do a relay race approach, we do things serially. In the initial phase of the project, we do a detailed requirement analysis, and then we move to design, then we move to code, testing and deployment. So it's a serial process. So if we find something in testing and which is linked to the development, linked to the analysis, it's a big loop back, which generates a big amount of rework. In Agile, the difference is that we have a roadmap which talks about maybe the features, list of the features which need to be delivered in next 2 years time frame, and inside the roadmap we have a releases. Now releases are of a shorter duration. They may vary from 3 months to 12 months, and inside those releases we have iterations. Iterations may vary from 2 weeks to 4 weeks, and then we have a daily meeting, a daily scrum meeting which talks about days plan. So rather than doing things serially, we do the things in a top down manner. We have a top level release plan, then the top level release plan get elaborated in multiple iterations, and the iterations get executed day by day, and we have a daily coordination and monitoring activity which manages that our day is going smooth. So rather than having a sequential approach of managing project, in Agile we have a top-down approach of managing projects. Now traditionally we have been seeing these triple constants or iron and triangle in all the project management literature. We talks about that there is a scope, cost and schedule, and success of the project depends upon how these three constants or how these three parameters are managed well. It is expected from the project team to deliver complete scope in time, in budget. Now in Agile we change this particular triangle, or we add more dimensions to it. The constraint still remains important, so all these three are grouped under the term called constraints. You still have cost budget, schedule budget, and you still have scope to start with, but we add two more dimensions to this traditional triangle, and these dimensions are the value, extrinsic quality or a value which the customer is getting out of this particular product, and the intrinsic quality of the product. How does this make different? Traditionally, if you have been given a project and you complete your project, the complete scope of your project within time and within budget, you are a very good project manager because you have done whatever is assigned to you, even if that project does not make any business value to the end customer. Traditionally, we are not bothered about what business value this project is giving. We are focusing on, okay, my project has this scope, this schedule, this cost, let me finish it. In Agile, we say, okay, scope, schedule, cost are still important, but we need to primarily focus on what value the end customer get out of it. You may not complete the complete scope, but you may still generate a good value from your software. If your customer can get value out of your development, that is a definition of success for Agile projects. So we add a value which is an extrinsic quality dimension to our Agile triangle, and there is another dimension which is called intrinsic quality is added in Agile triangle, and the intrinsic quality is something which identifies or which talks about that how adaptable your software is, your product is for future needs. These intrinsic qualities are the quality parameters or quality characteristics which cannot be visualized by looking at the product. They can only be visualized when you open the product, when you see the design, when you see the code of that particular product. And in Agile, we say is that until unless you have a good intrinsic quality, you won't be Agile going forward. Your product should be adaptable. So in Agile triangle, we add two more dimensions which are value and quality, intrinsic quality. And constraints still remains important, but constraints are not looked in a same way it has been looked traditionally. Constraints are there, but we focus more on value than constraints. Now, another difference, we focus for leading over managing. The Agile project manager, Agile leader sets the goal rather than making a detailed task lists. We manage principles, we manage values as Agile leaders rather than we manage tasks, what is done, what is not done. We create a self-managing team rather than managing a team. So team manages themselves. The team is a unit which manages itself. They are the one who gets the work done. And as an Agile leader, our goal is to lead them and create the self-organizing and self-managing team. So the focus moves from managing the team to creating the self-managing and self-organizing team. Adapting over conforming. Traditionally, we focus on conforming towards the baseline. Once the project plan gets baseline, it becomes like a benchmark for all the future development. In Agile, we focus on adaptation. We have a flexible release plan, and we do a planning by customer features rather than doing planning by tasks. So here we plan the work on the basis of customer values, or on the basis of by thinking or visualizing or targeting how much features we can develop in this given duration, rather than how many tasks which we can finish in this much time. In Agile, our scope is flexible. As I said in our previous slide as well, we need to focus more on value rather than scope. We need to give quick, fast value out of our software to the business, to the customers, rather than focusing on finishing the 100% scope which has been written by a customer in the initial phase of the development. In Agile, we focus on learning every iteration. We focus on retrospectives. We talks about that team should reflect on how they are doing and what they can do to improve them further. So traditionally, we do a lesson learned meetings which are quite late in the project. Sometimes we do at the milestones level, sometimes we do at the end of the project itself. Final topic, Agile Project Management Framework. So it's a framework which gives us a life cycle model for the Agile projects. It starts from the envision, same like traditionally we visualize what needs to be created, and then it moves into the speculation. The speculation creates a release plan. Speculation is more or less like a planning, but we use the word speculate to communicate that whatever we are planning at this particular moment has a good amount of uncertainties. Even the planning, the word meaning of planning does also means the same, that we are just planning and estimating. It does not mean that we are committing that we will do this much development in this much time frame. But just to emphasize the same feeling further, we use the term speculate, and at the end of the speculation is documented or communicated in the form of the release plan. And once we have a release plan, we start our iterations. We start exploring and adapting. So we start with the release plan, and then we start running iterations. At the end of every iteration, we generate a slice of the cake. We generate a small increment of our product, and then we take a retrospective, check that slice, check their taste, and adapt the future plan. So while we are checking that taste, we may realize that release plan is not covering all the assumptions or all the constraints which we have uncovered during this particular exploration. So exploration gives a feedback cycle to our complete release plan, and we keep running exploration and adaptation cycle till the time we are done with our final product. And once we have a final product, we close the project. So envision determines the product vision and project objective, constraints, project community, like who are the key stakeholders who are involved in this particular project and how the team will work together. Speculate, it is develop a capability or a feature based release plan. So traditionally, if you are talking about Scrum methodology of Agile, envision and speculate happens before we start the iterations, before we starts the sprint, because before we start a sprint we should have a product backlog ready. And how, from where the product backlog comes to the team? It comes through an envision and speculation. So you have a release plan, you have a top level product backlog built by stakeholders, and that is done in the phase called speculate. Once you are done with your speculate, the output of a speculate is that you have a product backlog and you have a release plan in hand, which is feature based release plan. And with these two inputs you start exploring. So exploring, practically you start running an iteration. So you start developing stories in a small iterations, and you prioritize them on the basis of various factors like risk, values. We will get into those details in our subsequent lessons. And then at the end of that exploration, we run an exploration cycles, and every cycle will have an adaptation and phase. We conduct a retrospective, we check how our velocity is going, how well we are converting the feature based release plan into a running working software. And that adaptation gives an input to a release plan. It refines the release plan by way of refining the end dates or refining the priorities of the scope, and this exploration and adaptation cycle keeps running till the time we get the final product delivered from the team. And at the end we conclude the project and pass the key learning to the subsequent teams. There is a term called iteration zero, and which is also sometimes referred in an examination. It is something which happens before we get into exploration phase. So while we are speculating, before we start exploring or before we start getting developing the user features or user stories, we may need some time which is required for creating an environment for the future, for the exploration cycles to run, for the iteration or sprints to run. And that the zero signifies that whatever we are doing in this particular iteration is not adding any customer or purchaser value. This is something which is just getting done for the team. So it is giving us, for example, you may need to create a CVS server, you may need to prepare machines with a particular development platform, you may need to create an environment, or you may need to organize the team space. If you have a new technology to work on, you may need to explore, or you may need to get trained in that particular technology. If there is a big architecture need to be visualized, you may think a basic skeleton of that architecture in iteration zero. So it is usually a part of envision phase, and it should be kept for the minimal duration, but definitely it depends upon the nature of the project we are working in. The iteration zero for a very complex software may not be the same, may not be of the same duration against the simple website which is just taking some inputs and presenting some data to the end user. So depending upon the complexity of the software, depending upon the complexity of the team involved, because if you have a distributed team, if you have a multiple scrum team, so those factors may result into a bigger iteration zero. So key points is, here we do something which is important for the team. We may agree on some level of top level interfaces with the other external applications, and we do not produce anything in this particular iteration which is directly valuable to the end user. These are like 3 time horizons. From exam point of view or for the future discussion, you should just keep in mind, whenever we are talking about roadmap, it is something which we are talking about 2 year plus. So if I am talking about a product roadmap, it means that I am thinking of a time horizon of 2 years. Whenever we are talking about release planning, get a visualization of that, okay, we are doing something which is between 3 months to 12 months. And whenever we are talking about iterations, they usually of 2 weeks to 4 weeks, but in some exceptions they may go till 6 weeks. So whenever we have a discussion which is moving around iteration, visualize the time frame which is coming near to 2 to 4 weeks. We are done with our first lesson. In the first section of our lesson, we spoke about the background, the history of Agile. In the second section, we spoke about Agile values and principles. From exam point of view, keep in mind that you will get 3 to 5 questions from Agile values and principles. It's always a good idea to keep reading Agile principles so you get a feel of Agile, and whenever you get into a conflicting situation, whenever you have options which are giving you a very close, which are forcing you to take a close call, visualize or think about Agile principles. The Agile principles will give you a good direction for your right option. We spoke about the difference between Agile and traditional methodology, and we also spoke about Agile project management framework, where we have envision, speculate, explore, adapt, and close phases. So our next lesson would be on Scrum. See you.